Hey, so for this video, let's learn how we can build a footer. So we already have our footer element. A quick mistake that I usually see people do is they'll take their footer and they'll come over here and then they'll select it with their CSS and they're on their way. Why is that bad? Well, similar to a div, the footer can be used in other places. And so when you start adding very specific styles like that, now suddenly all the footer styles are all over the place. So we don't want to make that mistake. Something that I like to do, definitely want to put a class on it, but I like to prefix things. So this identifies it as, hey, this is the global footer. So I know, like, when I touch this, I better be careful because that's going to affect everywhere on the site that we see this footer. So put a class on it, right? And nothing appears. We don't have anything in there. So what typically goes inside the footer? Usually you can have like a map, some contact information, some maybe footer links, social media. There's all kinds of different options. How do we want to structure this thing? Well, usually inside of my footer, I'll put like a wrapper content, kind of like we've done here with the header. So, and then, we might have like a navigation of some sort. So we've got our navigation and just some basic links. And then we could just kind of duplicate this throughout. So there's our basic link. So let's style our footer. Let's put a background color on this footer here. And maybe the top of the footer is this color. Okay. The one thing to note, our footer is clear up here, right? It just floats to the top because this is all blocks. We haven't done anything special to push the footer down, so it always sticks kind of the bottom of the website. And there's many different tricks. I'm sure you might have come across that on how to accomplish that. One of the things I kind of like to do is use like a combination of things like with Flexbox or something, and always have this float down to the very end. But let's just get into kind of the building blocks here. So we've got our links. What do you typically put in a footer? Usually at the bottom of the footer, I'll have like a copyright and all rights reserved or something like that. So why don't we just throw that in there for the purposes of this video. So we've got our paragraph here. Okay, so we can say copyright, something like that, and then the year. Well, okay, so this is HTML. I would never normally hard code a year like this because what happens when it's 2020 and the next year and so on and so on. You have to keep going into the footer and updating this. With PHP, we don't have to do that. We just get the current date, year, and it outputs it. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Sometimes you'll see something like this, all rights reserved or something. Okay, so there's the bottom of our footer. Now it's the same color. And what if I wanted this to be a different color? Well, I would, have to wrap this in a div here. And then say, okay, this is going to be the global footer bottom. Okay, so we're going to grab this style, come over here. And let's make this a little bit of a darker color. Let's go this color here. Okay, cool. So this is looking nice, right? Why don't we call this our global footer like copyright? So we can put a class here on the copyright section. And then we can take that same class that I forgot to copy. All right, so now we're targeting this specifically. Man, I'm just not nailing these shortcuts. Okay, so we want to text align center that. Okay, so now in our copyright, I don't know, probably could use a little bit of padding maybe on the footer bottom here. So let's just do padding of like 5 pixels on the top and bottom. Okay, that seems a little much. I don't know that I wanted that much. interesting. So see we need to kind of zero this out. So why don't we just say margin here, just say 0. That way we're not getting too much spacing there. Okay, so what I'm building up to here is we might think we're just cruising along and everything's great. Here's another mistake. We've decided that right here, as we're styling the footer, sometimes you come into existing footers, you need to add some padding, right? So let's add some padding here. And we want to make sure that the top and bottom has 30 pixels. And whoa, what just happened? Oh, okay, well, no, I just want it on the sides. Oh, well, now what do I got to do here? Do I got to like margin this down, or how do I, okay, oh, well, maybe I'm just overthinking it. Maybe I don't want anything on the bottom. Okay, problem solved. Well, what I hate to see is what happens when now we need some padding down here. Well, what are your options? Do you come to this element and start adding margin on the top of that? Do you like say everything on this row? And so it just becomes super messy. So here's what I'm going to show you visually. When we take off this color, we can see that we're still inside of this main footer. Okay, so we want that, but what we don't want is we don't want it necessarily nested inside of this whole background color, and we don't want the footer to get like blown out, right? Like how we saw there. I don't know what the right word is. But so how do we fix this? Well, we should kind of rearrange the structure. So we've already kind of got a footer bottom. What we really need is we need like the footer top for this section. And so before we just go off and style this footer section, we really should be styling the top section with it as well. So this is really where the background color should go for that. Okay, and let's see what we did here. Oh, but that's on the row. So sorry, I got a little too excited about that. So really, we need to put this on its own div here. And you might be thinking, wow, that's like a lot of wrapping containers, but well, our row is inside of that, and then our styles or background colors on that. So now as we start to add our padding and different things here, so what do we got here? Looks like we've got, oh, so again, kind of goes back to that CSS reset that I have mentioned in several videos. We've got some spacing on our little UL here, and look what that's causing. So here let's just add this class here so we can see what's going on. We'll just call this our footer links, and we'll come over here. And margin 0 here, padding 0, and let's just take off that list style type here as well. So you can see we've got a lot of little things to do. Did I not save this, or did I do something wrong? Global footer links. Okay, so now take a look at how we've got this structured. So now our background color is there, and it's totally separate from our bottom, right? And so now when we want to add padding to the footer, well, it'll behave as expected, but really we can control that padding to only add padding on this section as we would think, right? Like as the blocks stack per se. See this? Now we've got that nice spacing that we were after to get it on the top and bottom without messing up the very bottom part of the footer. So when you're building your footers, and especially as you're adding more content to like this section, things and spacing can get really out of whack if you don't structure it correctly. So hopefully that gives some insights into some of the challenges that you can come across. And yeah, it's up to you. Just kind of make it fun, put some other things in here, add some columns. You could even take this example of how I've got the 3-column layout, maybe even just do a 2-column layout. Just depends what you need in the footer. Sometimes it doesn't have to be so wide. You can reduce the max width there, have something smaller. But yeah, so hope you found that interesting. And what I've got planned for the next kind of video series here is I want to do like an A to Z of HTML elements, starting with the first element that starts with the letter A and kind of work its way down to Z. I thought that'd be fun, exciting, and maybe we can all learn something new from that. So anyways, catch you in the next one. Later.